Hello everyone, welcome to the LSCDS Coffee Break Spotlight. I'm Tania from the LSCDS writing team, and I'm delighted to have one of our alumni, Maria Mercado, with us. Maria Mercado is a fifth-year PhD student at the Fraser Lab in the Department of Molecular Genetics. In Fraser Lab, her research focuses on using natural variation to study anaerobic respiration in C. elegans. She first joined LSCDS in her second year of graduate studies as a finance and business development associate, and then stayed on for the following year to spearhead the development of LSCDS job shadowing program. Following her 2-year tenure as LSCDS president from 2019 to 2021, she then moved on to co-found Nalumar, an early-stage startup venture spun out of the Fraser Lab. Maria, thank you so much for joining us today. Like I have mentioned, you are a graduate student and a co-founder of the Nalumar. Could you please tell us a little bit about your role with the company?
Hey, sure. So just to preface this, I am still a full-time student. My current job is still, doing my own research, doing my own project, but on the side, I co-founded this company alongside my PI and one of the postdocs in our lab. So what I do in Nalumar is I put up, because you're an entrepreneur, you put on a lot of different hats. So part of my job with them is that I do a lot of the market research, a lot of the financial analysis, a lot of the fundraising endeavors for starting a company. A lot of it is just doing research, but more on just the business side of things. And then a lot of the administrative and legislative stuff. So applying for grants, applying for different competitions and different incubators and all that stuff.
Thank you. Do you think any of the skills that you have learned in LSCDS have helped you to, start this venture?
Yeah, well, for sure. So I had, quite a few different roles within LSCDS, but at every single one of them, one of the things that, I developed, one of the skills that I developed the most, I think, was really just that interpersonal ability to really just connect with people and foster relationships. And that's kind of the thing, one of the things that I think has been key in, becoming a student entrepreneur is really figuring out and just being able to reach out to different people and connecting with them and growing your network to see how you can leverage that to grow your company as well.
Right. We talk a lot about the soft skills nowadays, especially for students who want to transition to the industry. And the interpersonal skill has to be one of the most important.
Yep.
So as you mentioned that you have had different role in LSCDS. What do you have a favorite or impactful event that you still think of?
Well, so here's a bit of the thing with me is that I was never directly involved with any singular event, because a lot of the roles that I've had with LSCDS have been more on either the support side of things. So when I first started, I was a finance associate. So in my first year and a half, I was just raising money for LSCDS. And that's kind of where I built, a lot of the core of my soft skills of being able to know, what customers, and in this case, different employers for our grad students are looking for, what skills are they looking for, and how to translate that so that our students are a bit more prepared for that. And in the years that had passed, as I continued to stay on with LSCDS, I developed and spearheaded the job shadowing program. So again, that's kind of off-site. So it wasn't necessarily an event that I attended. And then I moved on to become president. And a lot of that is, again, very, very, very support focused, where I just support all of the other team leads that are on the ground and kind of running the events themselves. But I will say I have participated in running most of the singular events. So the ones that I found to be the most useful for me, especially with the consideration of, okay, if I was a student, what would be the most useful one? I think ITCS is the one that piqued my interest the most, and the one that I really saw was one of the ones that were most helpful to the students. So ITCS, I'm sure Tania, you can cover this, or you can learn more about it on LSCDS's website, but ITCS is a 4-month-long program where students are put into groups and are given a hypothetical project that they can then work on with industry mentors to kind of simulate what a case would be like in the industry. And I found that even just as someone who was helping organize the event and not necessarily participating in it, I can really see the impact that it had on students' like perceptions of what kinds of jobs they wanted after, after they graduate.
Right. ITCS study program is also one of my favorite program too. When you learn working in a team, you learn solving a problem. It's lots of thing we are going to use later in the practical life. So besides working at NALUMA now and your research, do you see yourself in a particular career direction in the future, or do you think about that you are more suitable for this kind of role?
Yeah, so that's a really interesting question, because when I first joined LSCDS, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And so one of the reasons why I did join was to figure it out along the way. And because helping with LSCDS, participating in LSCDS's events really exposes you to different career paths, I kind of used it to kind of cull down my choices. What are the things I liked and I didn't like? But one of the things I always kept into consideration amongst all of this was really keep an open mind, because you don't necessarily know what options are out there for you and what you will and won't enjoy. So to put it in a short answer, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, and I still don't technically know what I wanted to do. But this opportunity of founding a company alongside my PI and one of my colleagues in the lab, this was an opportunity that really came out of left field for us, right? It started off as a curiosity project. We wanted to see if something had worked, and this is adjacent to a lot of the stuff that we're doing in the lab. For example, for my own PhD project, but once we saw that it started working, we then really saw the potential in this becoming, a startup venture. So if you had asked me 10 months or like a year ago, if this is something that I saw myself doing, I would say no. But now that, we're currently in the process of doing it, and we're really seeing how things are playing out, then, if it works, I would love the opportunity to keep on doing this. And if it doesn't work, then, I can still take everything that I learned from this opportunity onto whatever other endeavor I decide to do next.
So I see that you are quite flexible on what to accept what comes on next. And I'm sure with all the qualities you have in your toolbox, you will do an amazing job in future. So if you have to redo the graduate study all over again, or for trainees who are doing it now, what would be your advice, or what would you change in this process?
Yeah, I think, I have a couple of pieces of advice, or at least things I want people to be a little bit more cognizant about. There is never a time too early to start thinking about what you want to do after grad school, right? Whether if you're going to be an academic, then that you really have to hone in on your research and get those papers and publications, yes. But if you kind of have an idea early on that you want to explore other options, or you don't know what else is out there, the job searching journey isn't just when you graduate and you need a job. It's really, it involves a lot of, creating your personal narrative, doing a lot of self-reflection as to what it is you actually want to do. And then from there, building the connections that you'll need to get to that first step. And so it really is a very, very long process. And the earlier you start, I think it's just easier for you later on down the road for when it is you actually have to start applying to things. The second piece of advice that I would give to students, or I would tell myself if I were to start all over again, is even if you think that something isn't for you, try it first before writing it off completely. So just as an example of all of this, for individuals who aren't sure whether, industry is really for them, or what exactly it is an industry that they wanted to do, one of the reasons why LSCDS is here is to provide you with kind of like soft entry opportunities for you to test the waters before committing. And likewise, for myself personally, in terms of the skills that I need to develop, if you ask me in my first year if I liked the idea of like public speaking or leading a team, or doing any of the business side, the managerial side of things, I never really saw myself in a position, like in a leadership position, until it was basically given to me kind of by force. But it was one of those things where even though I saw it as a challenge, I didn't say no to it, and I found myself growing to like what I do. So it's things like that, where you don't want to necessarily close off any doors before you've even tried them.
Right. So explore and start as early as possible, and maybe things that one wouldn't consider, but when they try, it would grow on them. Okay.
Yeah.
So there are lots of research students who wants to actually take your path. So they have a research idea and they're interested to commercialize that idea. So what do you think your advice would be for them to start this journey? What's the process that you recommend?
Well, the first thing that I will say is that in order to commercialize your research, there are quite a few steps before you can really end up becoming a company, right? And one of the first things to ask yourself is whether you want to do this in conjunction with your university or whether you wanted to do that independently. Although I will say, so as an example, we work very closely with U of T to kind of spearhead this research idea and turn it into something that is commercializable. And in doing so, the process includes things like disclosing your invention to the university, and then from there, really working closely with the IPO, the IP office at U of T to come up with a commercialization plan. And that commercialization plan is going to be what's going to guide you in your endeavor to start the company. And a lot of the interim from having an idea to starting a company, a lot of the steps in between are things like joining an incubator to really figure out what it is that, what are the current markets that are out there that have a need for your kind of technology, or fundraising. So talking to a lot of venture capitalists, angel investors, different organizations and, companies that may have a vested interest in what you and your tech can do. A lot of that is, again, feeling out who your potential partners may be, potential collaborators. It's not unlike having a research project that involves looking for, the suitable collaborators to achieve your goal. It's just within the setting of doing it for a company instead.
So there are a lot of aspects of it, I can see. As an entrepreneur, what was the most challenging part for you?
I think it's the most challenging part, I think, would just be shifting the mindset from an academic one to an industry one, right? So when you're pitching to VCs, when you're trying to raise money for, a private endeavor, it's a very, very different from, writing a government funded grant. What people look for, they will trust that your technology works because you're the scientist. What they would like to see is like, what's your business plan? What are your financial projections? And a lot of that is stuff that they don't teach you in grad school. And so part of the merit of joining a lot of these different, incubators, accelerator programs, et cetera, specifically geared towards students, is that they give you the opportunity to also learn about the business and management side while you're incubating this idea.
So having a business acumen and a good management style is important.
100%.
Besides your research idea, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks. So this would be my last question for you today. And this is a very timely question because since the pandemic began, many of the networking and professional development opportunities for the students have moved on to online platforms. And so that means there are less opportunity to interact in person or to make an impression on someone. So what would be your advice to make the best use of the online platform and to make leave an impression in the Zoom room?
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess I can give two pieces of advice, one for maybe before an event and definitely after the event. So before the event, if it's something that you know that it's going to be very useful for you, do your research, do a little bit of research into who the speakers are, if it's a bigger conference, who the attendees are going to be, what companies are going to be out there, and try to make a list for yourself of the objectives that you want out of this kind of conference, the objectives that you want out of a conversation with someone, if you want to establish a connection and things like that. So you kind of can really narrow down and have a bit more of a meaningful experience when you're talking to these individuals. I would say for after the event though, because I know during a virtual event, a lot of it can get, it's hectic, it's a little bit busy. There's so many individuals on the screen. You may not necessarily have a time to do a one-on-one with the person that you want to contact, but always, always, always follow up. Ask someone, add someone on LinkedIn, ask them out for an informational interview or a coffee chat. Just, make sure that if there is something that you would like to, if there's a connection that you'd like to foster moving forward, then it's definitely something that you need to follow up on, maybe even more than once, not just after the event.
So to do some research beforehand and list your agenda, whom you want to talk to, or what are the topic you want to learn about, and then of course follow up to continue that interpersonal experience. Great. Maria, thank you very much for joining us.